record with him. Pac usually charges fees to do collaborations, but he never charges his homies, so this one was free as a favor for DJ Ron G. Tupac and his crew of his manager Freddie Moore, Zay Turner, and his homie Stretch, aka Big Stretch, would drive to Ron G's house to record. Big Stretch was one of Tupac's closest homies and had been down with him since day one, before Pac even started rapping or starring in films. Stretch was one of Pac's heaters and always backed him up. No matter the circumstances, he would fight with Pac. When they arrived, Pac would lay down a very eerie verse on a track that would be called The Heat. During the recording sessions, Pac was constantly getting paged, so he seemed nervous. The verse Pac laid down would completely predict what would happen at Quad Studios in the following hours. He even said that they're sending armies out to bomb him, which is eerie considering the fact that the men who shot him that night were dressed in army fatigues.
This is the Google Pixel 9, and this is a dance tutorial. But with Circle to Search, it's also a where to buy that wavy mirror in the background tutorial? Whoa, nice move.
They will actually pay you for just playing their games. There's this app called Just Play. You can withdraw the money you earn every 3 hours. And get this.
No. I'm gonna miss you.
I won't forget you.
Tupac was clearly paranoid when recording this verse. He felt it in his gut that something wasn't right that night. His gut instincts proved to be true, because Jimmy Henchman would page Pac to do a song with a rapper that he was representing, Little Sean. Jimmy, being a convicted drug trafficker and had been charged with second-degree murder, was trying to get in the music business to make a legit living. The eerie part about this is that Henchman literally booked this studio for Tupac to record it days before, whilst Pac had no knowledge of this whatsoever. So this setup was well planned out, and Jimmy Henchman was about to carry out the robbery. Henchman offered Pac $7,000 to lay the wax, to which Pac could not refuse at the time since he was spending a fortune on his ongoing legal battle with Ayanna Jackson. Pac would agree, and he was given the location of the studio, Quad Studios at 723 7th Avenue between 48th and 49th Street in Times Square. What made the situation even more weird was that Biggie, Puffy, and the rest of Junior Mafia were already at the studio recording for their upcoming album, Conspiracy. After Pac was finished recording with DJ Ron G, him and his homies decided that they were going to go to Quad Studios to record with Little Sean. Pac and Stretch didn't have a good feeling about this. I mean, Pac was beefing with Haitian Jack, telling him that he's never going to talk to him again, and after this whole thing with the assault case, all of a sudden, Jack's associate, Jimmy Henchman, wants to do a song. It seemed like a setup in the eyes of Pac and Stretch, but Pac couldn't really turn down an easy $7,000. Tupac, along with his manager Freddie Moore, his common-law brother Zay Turner, and Stretch would jump in the car and head to Quad Studios. Pac stopped to get some wood before heading to the studio, which angered Henchman that Pac was taking longer than he should have, so Henchman called Pac again.
Yo, where you at? Why you ain't coming? I'm coming, hold on.
Then shortly after, Tupac would call Jimmy Henchman back to ask for directions to the Quad Studios. But this is when tensions were rising, when Henchman would claim that he doesn't have the money, which is just suspicious. Tupac would immediately crash out on Jimmy Henchman during this phone call, cursing him out.
Yo, I need the directions. Where is it at? I don't have the money. If you don't have the money, I'm not coming, you little sucker. You ass motherfucker. You punk motherfucker. You New York better have my fucking money when I get there.
Jimmy hung up, so now Pac was pissed, feeling as if his time was wasted. After this phone call, Jimmy felt real disrespected, so that's when Jimmy Henchman would officially give the green light. So he ordered a man whose name would go unknown and another man named Dexter Isaac to teach Tupac a lesson.
What's up, rude boy? Are you in New York? Yeah, I just got back in town. Star, me need to chat with you right away. Come by the spot on South Oxford and Clinton Hill. We'll talk. Me soon come.
The unknown man then pulled up in his Lexus with a man named Lorenzo Fat Cat Davis in the front seat. Dexter hopped in the back seat and immediately was told that Jimmy needed him to do a job, and that job was robbing Tupac. Jimmy needs you to do a job for him. He wants you to rob rapper Tupac and teach him a lesson in respect. Why? Jimmy made a deal for Tupac to do a song with one of his artists, Little Sean. What happened? He agreed to pay Tupac $7,000, but he wanted to give him a check. Tupac wanted cash, and Jimmy refused. So Tupac started calling him all kind of and he told Jimmy, "You New York better have my cash when I get there. So what's in it for me? You get to keep all the jewelry from the robbery except for the big diamond ring. Plus, he'll give you another $2,500 to pay your people for helping." The unknown man then started running down all of Pac's jewelry. He knew this because Haitian Jack was the one who took him shopping in the Diamond District in New York City. The big ring that Pac had was worth $35,000. The small one was worth $20,000. A Rolex, which is the same one that Haitian Jack gifted him, worth $20,000. Several gold chains and bracelets. They then arrived at the spot where Dexter would meet up with Spunk and JD, two members of his crew that he put in positions to inform them about the robbery, to which they were on board. Dexter gave JD a .45 caliber pistol and Spunk a 9mm. He was strapped with the 9 himself. They then hopped in the car, putting the weapons in the stash box, and followed the unknown man in a Lexus heading to Quad Studios. When they got to the Quad Studios, Dexter wanted to holler at Jimmy, so Jimmy told him to come upstairs and leave everyone else in the lobby. When Dexter got out of the elevator, henchmen greeted him. Dexter was shocked to see Biggie and Lil Cease on a sofa, Little Sean in a vocal booth, and Puffy talking to someone. Dexter asked Jimmy Henchman how many people know what's about to go down, to which Jimmy nodded his head in Puffy's direction, saying that he knows. So Puffy was 100% aware that Tupac was about to get robbed that night. Jimmy gave Dexter the instructions, telling them not to kill him, just rough him up and take his stuff. Henchman then called Pac, telling him that he would get him his money, claiming that he spoke to the founder of Uptown Records, Andre Harrell, on the phone to make sure he gets the money. But this was a lie, because according to Dexter Isaac, Andre Harrell was at Quad Studios the whole time. This was Henchman's way of calming Pac down in order to lure him to Quad Studios. Henchman would mess up his lie because on the phone, he also said he's going to give Pac the $7,000 out of his own pocket, but this was just so suspicious because he called Pac earlier saying he doesn't have it, so how did $7K magically appear in his pockets? He was supposed to pay him out of pocket the whole time anyway, so this definitely raised some eyebrows in Tupac's entourage. Pac needed the money, so he agreed to head over to the studio, not knowing he was stepping into a trap. After hours of waiting, it's now November 30th at 12:16 a.m. Tupac and his crew had finally arrived at Quad Studios. They parked the car in a parking garage at 148 West 48th Street and walked around the corner to the studio on 7th Avenue. 9 minutes later, they were out front the studio, but on a floor above, a small terrace on the 10th floor overlooking 48th Street, were a couple of members of Biggie's group Junior Mafia, most notably Lil Cease, who hollered at Pac to come up and say what's up. Tupac was now more relaxed, knowing his homie Lil Cease was here. Cease and Junior Mafia loved Tupac, always greeting him when he was in Brooklyn. Cease would then inform Biggie and the rest that Pac was here, so Biggie told him to go get Pac. As Pac was walking in the studio, he saw a suspicious guy dressed in army fatigues with boots smoking a cigarette, but the man just glanced at him quickly, then looked away. This was a bit strange to Tupac, who went on to say that he was high off chronic, so he didn't think nothing was going to happen to him. This man would be revealed to be the man I mentioned earlier named JD. and another guy behind the security desk, which was Spunk. Pac pressed the intercom and they would be buzzed in. A man named David Rosner was the one who buzzed Pac in, who was a manager at Quad Studios. As Pac and his entourage entered the building, JD and Dexter Isaac, who was somewhere outside, would follow them in. When Tupac entered the building, he was wondering why the guy outside, JD, and the guy behind the desk, Spunk, weren't showing him any love. Pac assumed that this was Biggie's security, since Lil Cease and the rest of Junior Mafia were here, so that was a fair assumption. Tupac, Stretch, his brother-in-law Zayd, and his manager, Freddie Moore, were now trapped at a dead end waiting for the elevator when all of a sudden Spunk and JD came around the corner, pulling out pistols on them, yelling, "Don't nobody move, everybody on the floor. You know what time it is. Run your give up the jewelry and get on the floor." To Pac's surprise, his entire entourage but himself got on the floor following the gunmen's orders. Tupac was shocked that even Stretch, a guy he viewed as tough and would always protect him, was following the commands. Tupac was not complying with any commands. He assumed Stretch would fight them since he was the tallest one there. Pac froze up as the gunmen were strictly focused on him, almost ignoring his entire entourage, so he was clearly the main target here. The gunmen then would start searching Pac against the wall to see if he was strapped. They told him to take off his jewelry, but Pac refused and started cursing at them. This would piss off the gunmen, causing them to fire a shot at Tupac in the groin area. Now, Pac has told two different versions of this story. One story is the one I just told. The second version he told was that he had two twin Glocks on him, and when he went to reach for them, that's when they shot him. Tupac was shot twice in the groin, once in the hand, and twice in the head. Both bullets did not pierce through his skull. According to Stretch, Tupac shot himself with his own gun when the gunman tried grabbing it off his waistband. Dexter Isaac would later reveal that Stretch allegedly set Pac up. That's how they always knew his every move when they were on the way to the studio and went to prepare. Stretch set the whole thing up. He was in cahoots and was giving us the play-by-play. He was in communication with Jimmy Henchman, who had promised him a quarter brick of cane. Now this could explain why Stretch did nothing to stop the robbery and cooperated, which was very much out of character for him. Tupac was upset at Stretch for not doing anything during the robbery. This would cause a rift between Pac and Stretch. Tupac, with multiple gunshot wounds, was beaten down in the lobby, kicked multiple times, robbed of jewelry, and possibly shot once more. I dropped to the floor. Everything in my mind said, "Pac, pretend you're dead." It didn't matter. They started kicking me, hitting me. I never said, "Don't shoot." I was quiet as hell. They were snatching my foot off me while I was laying on the floor. I had my eyes closed, but I was shaking because the situation had me shaking. And then I felt something on the back of my head, something real strong. I thought they stomped me or pistol whipped me, or they were stomping my head against the concrete. I saw white, just white. I didn't hear nothing. I didn't feel nothing. And I said, "I'm unconscious," but I was conscious. And then I felt again, and I could hear things now, and I could see things, and they were bringing me back to consciousness. Then they did it again, and I couldn't hear nothing, and I couldn't see nothing. It was just all white. And then they hit me again, and I could hear things, and I could see things, and I knew I was conscious again. They also robbed Pac's manager, Freddie Moore, for his jewelry, as his entourage was at gunpoint. Lil Cease and Nino Brown of Junior Mafia would reach the ground floor after the elevator opened to greet Pac, but they were instead greeted by two guns to their faces, with the gunmen telling him to get back in the elevator. They got back in the elevator and went back up.
And when I was about to walk out, two dudes came from both sides back in the elevator. Got me and Nino stepped back in, and they just holding the guns at us. And I was so paranoid and nervous, I'm hitting door open. Now I'm like, the door just did, they like this. And when the door finally started closing, they went back to them.
Tupac didn't even realize that he got shot in the head. He just had his stomach hurting from being kicked several times. They took almost all of Pac's jewelry except the Rolex that Haitian Jack gifted him, which was worth $20,000 and one of the most valuable pieces he had. They left it on him to send a message to Pac to let him know that he was disrespecting the wrong people and not to mess with Haitian Jack. Pac's common law brother, Zaid, then attended to Pac, who was hurt. According to Pac, he got up and went limping to the door when he saw police cars out front. They then went to the elevator to go upstairs. The police report, however, claims that Tupac went outside and yelled for the police, but Pac says he tried avoiding them. Tupac then, from the elevator, went to the 8th floor where he was supposed to record with Little Sean. When the elevator opened, they saw Puffy, Jimmy Henchman, and Andre Harrell. Zaid then allegedly put a gun to the back of Puffy's head, whose back was turned to them. Zaid then made everyone put their hands up. Now there's more stories to this because Pac said he walked upstairs and this didn't happen, but he said he saw Puffy and Jimmy Henchman, along with the Trackmasters and the Uptown Records staff. Some say Biggie was also on the 8th floor, but it's believed that Biggie actually went to the lobby after Lil Cease informed him about Pac being shot, but was held up with the police. Tupac does recall seeing Biggie, but most likely not on the 8th floor, probably when it got to the lobby to be put in the ambulance, because Biggie was never on the 8th floor. He was recording on the 10th floor the whole time. The police and EMS would eventually make their way to the 8th floor, and the medics would attend to Pac, putting him on a stretcher, wheeling him to the ambulance. When he went down the elevator, he saw Biggie and Chico in the lobby, but Pac was just confused and didn't know what was happening. Pac started accusing everyone when he was being put in the ambulance. He would throw up the middle finger at Biggie and Chico. They didn't really take nothing of it, thinking Pac was just confused after being shot. After all, Biggie just came to the lobby with his gun to defend Tupac. Pac would be interviewed by the press while getting wheeled in the ambulance, when he would claim it was a setup, but didn't detail who set it up. He then notoriously gave the press a middle finger for taking a picture while he was on a stretcher. Tupac would then undergo surgery when he arrived at the Bellevue Hospital Center on 462 First Avenue in Manhattan. Tupac would survive the 5 gunshots that he endured that night, but now Pac was on a mission to figure out who shot him. According to Little Sean, Biggie warned Pac about Haitian Jack a week before the shooting. Pac allegedly told Haitian Jack that Biggie told him to stay away from him, which prompted Jack to send his men to rob Biggie. The robbers said, "This is what you get for telling Pac to stay away from Haitian Jack." Biggie even allegedly told Pac about the robbery, and this is when Tupac would start distancing himself from Haitian Jack. Against medical advice, Pac checked himself out of the hospital hours after surgery. The next day, on December 1st, 1994, Tupac made a surprise appearance in court to decide his fate in the Ayanna Jackson case in a wheelchair. The jurors told him that he didn't have to come to court in that condition, but Pac wanted to fight for his life. Pac would leave early and check into the Metropolitan Hospital in New York under the name Bob Day, where he would get further treatment. While in the hospital, the verdict found Pac guilty of abuse. The illegal possession of a firearm charges would be dropped. Tupac would hide out at actress Jasmine Guy's apartment secretly while recovering from the shooting. Tupac's sentencing would begin in a couple of months, but Tupac unfortunately was unable to make the $3 million bond to keep himself free until his sentencing, so he would ultimately surrender to authorities in December of '94. In January of '95, he was moved to the North Infirmary Command on Rikers Island in the Bronx. On February 7, 1995, Tupac was sentenced to 18 months to 4.5 years in prison. He would then be transferred to Clinton Correctional Facility in New York. Little did Biggie know it, but the shooting at the Quad Studios would officially mark the end of Biggie and Pac's friendship, because Tupac thought Biggie knew what was going to happen to him that night. The same month that Pac got sentenced, on February 21st, 1995, Biggie dropped a single called Who Shot Ya? This song would officially spark the beef between Biggie and Tupac, because Pac himself would view this as a diss track towards him. I mean, the name of the track itself seems like he's talking about Tupac, plus the timing of which Biggie dropped the track weeks after Pac's sentencing was just bad as well.
You start telling me, oh, I can't talk to you, my attorney. I'm like, what? You ain't who you say you are, man. You ain't no gangster. No gangster's attorney can tell him not to talk to his man. I can hear sweat trickling down the cheek. Your heartbeat sound like... Puff can't stand Tupac. What do you think the conversation with Jimmy Henchman and Andre Harrell and Puff in that office when they know Tupac is coming up there? What do you think the conversation is? Hold that thought. I'm about to straighten this little out. He don't stop talking reckless to me.
The track was actually recorded in 1994 before Tupac even got shot and was originally intended to appear on Mary J. Blige's album My Life, which became the Kay Murray interlude. The track was cut due to it being considered too violent. According to Biggie and Puffy's former bodyguard, Gene Deal, he said that Puffy and Andre Harrell were responsible for releasing the song while Biggie had no control over it.
Pac is shot up. You drop a song, who shot you? You don't think somebody was behind the thing? Yo, if we drop this, it's going to get a lot of play because everybody going to think we talking about Pac. That's what people... Who didn't think they was talking about Pac? Let the dummy raise his hand first, because they felt that it was going to get play. They felt that it was going to, people was going to get, it was going to get the attention that it needed to build big up. It was the right time for you talking about money-wise, revenue, the attention it needed. It was the right time for the record label, bruh. The record label make those decisions. You know, if they could tell motherfuckers, don't talk about positive no more. I want to hear about gangsters. I want to hear about killing, drugs. They can't stop a song like Who Shot You?
Puffy was a businessman, so he dropped the track and marketed it as a Tupac diss to get more attention to the record. And that's exactly what happened. It would be this misunderstanding that would start one of the most known beefs in hip-hop history. Some people are on the fence about it as well. Some believe that the track was a subliminal diss towards Tupac, and some believe that it was a coincidence, but the track was recorded before Pac got shot, so I don't think it had anything to do with Tupac. Puffy just released it without Biggie's green light and marketed it as a diss towards Tupac for more attention to the record. While locked up, Tupac would start hearing through the grapevine that Biggie's homie shot him and that Biggie was bragging about it on Who Shot Ya. Tupac also felt as if Biggie was biting him. He claims he had to redo his third album, Me Against the World, after Biggie dropped Ready to Die, because Biggie, in his eyes, copied him by talking about death on the album.
I got shot. I'm like, yo, what happened? Come see me in jail. Biggie all in the air to my ear pockets, my homeboy room, but not see me. My homeboy Stretch is going to Biggie's concert. It's like abandoning me. But all in the air and on TV, they're like, yeah, Pop, rest, you know, keep the struggle on. I was like, yo, I'm starting to turn into like Slick Rick. You're just going to act like I'm going to just be in jail and they're going to give me shout outs and try to take my position. And if you watch, that's what.
This is the Google Pixel 9, and this is what trash talk used to look like before you could ask Gemini to make an image of wide receiver gloves made out of butter. Their guys have been dropping stuff all day.
Since 1913, we've had one job, pioneering a motor oil so advanced, rideshare drivers can trust it to protect their engines for up to 500,000 miles. Guaranteed. 5 stars for engine upkeep, Charlene. Pennzoil. Long may we drive.
With a huge selection of saunas, 2 incredible spas, 2 in-ground and above-ground pools, Aurora is your family fun store. Isn't that right, Megan?
That's right, Cooper.
Only at Aurora Pool and Spa, your family fun store.
They're great.
When migraine strikes, you're faced with a choice. Accept the trade-offs of treating, or push through the pain and symptoms. With Ubrelvy, there's another option. One dose quickly stops migraine in its tracks. Treat it anytime, anywhere, without worrying where you are or if it's too late. Do not take with strong CYP3A4 inhibitors. Allergic reactions to Ubrelvy can happen. Most common side effects are nausea and sleepiness. Migraine pain relief starts with you. Ask about Ubrelvy. Learn how AbbVie can help you save.
Biggie did. Listen to it. I was there, got trained. He used to be under me like my lieutenant. The nigga like to come to New York. I used to do shows and let them come on before I did keep getting up and get around. Because nobody knew it in New York. And I used to tell it, yo, if you want to make your money, you gotta rap for the just do not rap for the I told it, don't rap for the just rap for the just about your records and this one with the this one. So all of a sudden he changed from being listen to Party and Boot, listen to his style. He changed from that to Big Pop. I was a terror since the public school era. Backroom passes, cutting classes with the asses. Smoking was a daily routine. Throw your hands in the air if you's a true player. Because of me, he had my album Me Against the World was the second one. He had the first one. I changed everything because Ready to Die came out and it sounded like my album. All my album was about, dealing with death. And then he came out Ready to Die and I had to switch it. Wow. That's why it was less East Coast rap, East Coast beats, because Biggie had just took my
That's what you can listen to it. That was a success too, because he took like West Coast sound.
I told him that. I trained. He was supposed to be Thug Life. All while he was coming up, I used to let him come on stage with me. He was screaming Thug Life.
Hey,
he was like, I hate Brooklyn. I hate New York. I'm out with them niggas, probably cheating me. Woo, woo, woo. All of a sudden he blew up, and he wasn't saying Thug Life. So I started getting mad, and I was seeing his place. He was hugging me, yo, Pop. Yo, think you was the only nigga that woo, woo. But he told me like about a week before I got shot. He knew the nigga was shot me. He was like, Pop, don't hang around this nigga. You know, I'm gonna go up here with the nigga that shot me. That ended up shooting me. He's like, Pop, because I knew him too. He was my coach. And I was like, what you mean? He's like, I'll talk to you about it later. And we didn't talk. The next time I saw him was in the studio where I got shot. So I knew he knew what happened. So I was like, Biggie, what happened? He kept sending me messages like like I'm gonna come see you. No, what happened? While I'm in jail, strangers is telling me, you don't know. Biggie homeboy shot you. Because they bragging. They telling niggas in jail, yo, we just got popped. And my cousin was in jail in New York because I got family out there. He's sitting right there while niggas getting the call going, yo, my homeboys just jacked that big Tupac. So that's how I knew who shot me, what happened, and everything.
While behind bars, on March 14th, 1995, Interscope released Tupac's third studio album, Me Against the World, which would have his best first week ever, debuting at number 1 on the Billboard 200 and selling 240,000 copies in the first week, more than double what his last album sold in the first week, becoming the first artist to have a number 1 album while incarcerated. Pac was on the verge of a major blow-up. In April of 1995, Pac graced the cover of Vibe magazine where he would do an interview from prison. During the interview, he detailed the shooting and would claim that Big Stretch turned his back on him for not defending him during the ambush. I'm thinking Stretch is going to fight. He was towering over those dudes. From what I know about the criminal element, if dudes come to rob you, they always hit the big dude first, but they didn't touch Stretch. They came straight to me. Everybody dropped to the floor like potatoes, but I just froze up. It wasn't like I was being brave or nothing. I just could not get on the floor. They started grabbing at me to see if I was strapped. They said, take off your jewels, and I wouldn't take them off. The light-skinned dude, the one that was standing outside, was on me. Stretch was on the floor, and the dude with the newspaper was holding the gun on him. He was telling the light-skinned dude, shoot that motherfucker. Then I got scared, because the dude had the gun to my stomach. All I could think about was bags and bags. I drew my arm around him to move the gun to my side. He shot and the gun twisted, and that's when I got hit the first time. I felt it in my leg. I didn't know I got shot in my balls. Meanwhile, in '95, while Pac was behind bars, Biggie completely took over the rap game. His album, Ready to Die, was already over 3 times platinum by the beginning of 1995. Like I said earlier, it was a slow burner. Biggie would grace the cover of the July 1995 Source magazine, where he would officially be named as the King of New York. That same month, on July 20th, 1995, Little Sean dropped his track Dom Perignon, which featured a Biggie Smalls sample on the hook. In the music video, you can see Biggie with people that are wearing shirts that read Henchman, which is Jimmy Henchman's label. So this confirmed that Biggie was still cool with Jimmy, the man that is responsible for the shooting at Quad Studios. This would also lead Pac to believe further that Biggie either had something to do with the shooting or knew about it, and felt that Biggie betrayed him. Henchman did business with Biggie and was invited to numerous bad boy parties. Meanwhile, Tupac's manager, Freddie Moore, and his goons were on the hunt for Pac shooters. Tupac had some real street cats in his corner, so this was now war between Henchman and the bad boy camp and Tupac's camp. But this beef was about to get real ugly, being the main ignition for the East and West Coast rivalry. The East Coast versus West Coast beef has been brewing for quite some time now. Tim Dog made entire tracks dissing the West Coast. There was always a competitive rivalry of which side is better. The Tupac and Biggie beef would be sort of the match on the puddle of gasoline to this East Coast and West Coast feud. Even though Tupac was born in New York, he represented the West Coast, and of course, Biggie represented the East. And now, of course, the boogeyman of hip hop, Suge Knight, was all in on escalating this coastal beef. Suge was head honcho of the biggest hip hop label in the world at the time, Death Row Records. Death Row and Puffy's Bad Boy Records were both gunning for that number one spot. Suge wanted to essentially monopolize hip hop by signing all of the talent with plans on becoming the biggest label, not just in hip hop, but in the world. He wanted to steal Puffy's artists from him, so Puffy felt some type of way about this. One man that would be in the middle of Suge and Puffy's feud was a man named Dwayne Keefy D. Davis. Keefy D and Suge Knight grew up with each other in Compton. Keefy D was affiliated with the Southside Compton Crips growing up, while Suge never really gangbanged growing up, but was surrounded by bloods in his neighborhood. Suge and Keefy D even played football together when they were younger, and Keefy D would go to Suge's house for barbecues after football games. Suge was focused on becoming an athlete, while Keefy D was focused on the drug game, to which by the early 90s, he was rich from moving massive amounts of drugs. Puffy and Keefy D first met in 1991 through Harlem legend Eric Von Zip, who holds the distinction of being one of the most successful hustlers in the history of New York City. Von Zip knew Puffy through his father, so they already had a relationship. Keefy D knew Von Zip through hustling in the drug game, as Keefy D would supply him with various drugs from California to New York, and the two were business partners. Tupac and Puffy actually had a great relationship, as well as being really close. They went to parties together and always looked out for each other. Suge and Puffy actually started off as friends. This was during the time when Death Row was a powerhouse in the game. Keefy D and Tupac knew each other because, as I stated earlier, him and Puffy would go to parties together while Keefy D was present at some of those parties. So Pac and Keefy D would see each other. This is when Bad Boy Records were trying to get off the ground, but Suge would offer Puffy free protection when Puffy and his artist came out to the West. After Biggie's explosion in late 94 with his debut studio album, Ready to Die, Biggie would take over the game, as I stated earlier, selling millions of records with multiple hits, doing shows all over the globe, and was now named the King of New York. Bad Boy Records seemingly came up and was now a competitor to Death Row, but Suge initially took a liking to Biggie. Suge even wanted Biggie to perform at his shows that he had booked, but Puffy wanted to charge Suge a fee, even though Suge gave Puffy free protection for a couple of years now and looked out for him, doing everything for Puffy for free. So now he wanted to charge Suge for just a performance. This angered Suge, now feeling as if Puffy owes him something for the favors that he did for him. What also didn't help was Suge's jealousy over Bad Boy in 1995, when Biggie was clearly the biggest and best rapper in the world. By this time, Death Row was falling off and had not dropped a classic since Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style in 1993, which was 2 years ago at this point in time. Suge had no artist to compete with Biggie. Big was ahead of all of Suge's artists lyrically and was selling the most records. As I stated earlier, the East Coast versus West Coast rivalry had been a thing for quite some time now, and it was not sitting well with Suge and other West Coast cats that Biggie, a guy who represents the enemy coast, is on top of the world, when the West had been running the game sales-wise since NWA blew up. Suge was notoriously known as a bully in the game, getting what he wanted no matter the consequences. He bullied everyone from music executives to artists like Vanilla Ice. He wanted to be one step ahead and went to extreme lengths to be the number one label. He wanted all the artists for himself, so now he had his sights set on Biggie. Suge would plan on forming an expansion of Death Row called Death Row East to wipe Diddy and Bad Boy off the map and take all the East Coast artists. Suge felt like he needed a special artist to compete with Biggie who can keep up with Biggie and outsell him. Dre and Snoop couldn't compete with Biggie lyrically, plus Dre was getting fed up with Death Row at this point. Snoop wasn't even working with Dre for his second album, The Dogfather. He was working with the Dog Pound, with Daz Dillinger handling a lot of the production. The artist that Suge was looking for was sitting in the Clinton Correctional Facility in New York, and that man was Tupac. In August of 1995 is when Suge Knight would officially declare war on Bad Boy Records and the East Coast. That month, Suge Knight was in New York, where he was set to attend the 95 Source Awards, which was being held in New York City. Suge went and visited Tupac at the Clinton Correctional Facility, and Suge would realize that Tupac was the artist he was looking for to compete with Biggie and the East Coast. On August 3rd, 1995, the second annual Source Awards was being held at the Paramount Theater in New York. This is when the East and West rivalry would be escalated to a whole new level. Bad Boy representing the East Coast and Death Row representing the West. Suge got on stage to escalate things further when he would diss Diddy, inviting all the East Coast artists to come join Death Row if they don't want the executive dancing in their videos and doing ad-libs. A clear shot at Puffy, and Suge said this while staring at Puffy dead in the eyes.
Any artist out there want to be an artist and want to stay a star, don't want to have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the videos, all on the record, dancing. Come to Death Row.
Suge's intentions were to steal all of Puffy's talent. This way Puffy would go out of business and Death Row would be the number one label. Now before this diss, Suge would shout out Tupac, which was the first hint that he was planning on bringing Pac on board to Death Row to destroy Bad Boy Records and claim the number one spot back.
Like to tell Tupac to keep his guards up, we ride with him.
Puffy was in complete shock that Suge said that. He couldn't believe it.
I really couldn't believe it because homeboy, me and him were friends.
Wow.
And yeah, he would pick me up from the airport.
Wow.
You know,
Never heard this before.
Yeah. I mean, you know, we gotta break some news here. He picked me up from the airport, the whole entire thing, and so it kind of had me taken back because I spoke to them as they were there. I really had thought we were cool. You know what I'm saying? Right. Cool acquaintances. You know what I'm saying? Just being respectful from people coming into other cities and stuff. Right. And so when he had said, I was like, whoa, I definitely feel where that's coming from. I know that it. What? Yeah. Are they crazy? I was like, wow, and I was like, I could blow this thing up right now, I decided I just felt it was really dangerous, you know what I'm saying, in a way, because the crowd was really with me.
Zeno was on here and said, he said they could have did that.
Yeah, they were just looking for the word or like throw something up and it's just crazy. And so then, we went to the tunnel, you know what I'm saying? And homeboy was in the tunnel, and we go and have a conversation. This is time where we run the tunnel, you know what I'm saying? The whole bar is mine. Let's not get it twisted, you know what I'm saying? I'm ordering garbage buckets of champagne. People are ordering like little things, garbage buckets. And, you know, started the bars where I would just stand and walk around. My feet wouldn't touch the floor. You know, this is where the after parties at, of course, at the world famous tunnel. Right. And so then when I had that, I ran up and I asked him, and he said, "Nah, I was talking about Jermaine Dupri." And I was just like, I was just like,
wait, hold on, what?
I was just like,
I never heard this, Paul.
I was just like,
you giving us too much. You trying.
Puffy would respond on stage later that night, saying that he knows that Suge was talking about him, and goes to say that he's proud of what the artists of Death Row Records have accomplished.
I'm the executive producer that a comment was made about a little bit earlier. But check this out. Contrary to what other people may feel, I would like to say that I'm very proud of Dr. Dre, of Death Row, and Suge Knight for their accomplishments. And all this East and West that needs to stop.
Tensions were so bad that the New York crowd were even booing at Snoop Dogg.
The East Coast don't love Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. The East Coast ain't got no love for Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg and Death Row. Y'all don't love us. Y'all don't love us. But let it be known here. Look, we know y'all East Coast. We know we at East Coast of
This is when the East versus West beef would be ignited. Now on the forefront, it was Bad Boy versus Death Row. According to Puffy himself, he saw Suge at the after party, who claimed he was not talking about Puffy with those comments, but rather was directing them at Jermaine Dupri. Puffy, on the other hand, panicked, because now it was way too dangerous to go out to the West, but he knew that he could not stay out of the West Coast, being that it's a huge market for his artists, so he needed new protection. Suge was always surrounded by hundreds of Mob Piru goons, so Puffy would need security, but he knew that hiring security would be insanely expensive. Suge's goons would outnumber them, so he would have to hire hundreds of bodyguards, which at that point, he wouldn't even break even if they went out there to do a show. Puffy would have to take Suge's formula and get close with gangs in LA to get cheaper protection. Suge was cool with the Bloods, being affiliated with the Mob Piru, so Puffy thought he ought to get the Crips backing him, since the Crips were much larger in numbers in Compton at the time. Puffy would then call an old friend, a man I mentioned earlier, New York gangster Von Zip. Von Zip was in the car with Keefy D, who was a highly respected member of the Southside Compton Crips.
Hey, what up, Puff? Yo, where's your boy Keefy? I need to talk to him. He's right here. Puffy want to talk to you. What's up, dog? Man, we're about to do the BET tour. Do you think it's alright for us to come out there? Why wouldn't it be? Your boy, Big CEO. He's tripping.
From there, Puffy gained the protection of the Crips in Compton when he was out in the West Coast to combat Suge and his goons. Puffy and Keefy D would form a good friendship following this. On August 15th, 1995, Biggie and the rest of Bad Boy were performing at 92.3 The Beat Summer Jam in Irvine, California. Von Zip invited Keefy D, who brought about 30 goons with him in protection of Bad Boy. Suge Knight got word that Biggie and Bad Boy were in California, so Suge pulled up to the show. Suge then saw Keefy D and wanted to holler at him, so the two talked, where Suge would ask Keefy D how he knows the Bad Boy camp, to which Keefy D would say that he knows them the same way that he knows Suge Knight. But Suge was too smart. He played chess, and he had already figured out what Puffy was doing. It was clear to Suge that Puffy was recruiting the Crips to back him on the West the same way Suge recruited the Piru to back him. Suge was tight. Not only was Bad Boy taking over the rap game, but now they had the Crips backing them. So Suge knew that this could potentially start a gang war between the Southside Compton Crips and the Mob Piru. Keefy D and Suge were childhood friends, like I mentioned earlier, so the two would maintain peace with each other. The next month, on September 24th, 1995, Jermaine Dupri was celebrating his birthday at the Platinum House nightclub in Atlanta. Both Suge Knight and Puffy were invited to the party, so they both attended. Suge was, of course, not going to miss the opportunity to bully Puffy. Suge confronted him, and the two got into a heated argument, ultimately leading to Suge Knight allegedly slapping Puffy and then putting him in a full Nelson. At the after party, they would meet again, where Suge had his homie Big Jake with him, who was a member of the Campanella Park Pyru. Puffy and his crew were inside when Suge and Big Jake arrived. Both men weren't strapped. Puffy was then informed that Suge had arrived, so Puffy and his crew went outside to talk to him. It was a normal conversation at first, but Suge was there to, of course, cause trouble, so a shouting match erupted in the parking lot. Suge's homie, Big Jake.
This is the Google Pixel 9, and this is your family leaving the photo you just took, taking your phone, and adding you. So now you have a picture from the family vacation with the whole family.
Look at what you've become. You don't feel anything. I feel it all.
The Crow. Time is yours to make the most of. In one race,
would end up getting shot and killed during this argument, allegedly by one of Puffy's bodyguards named Anthony Jones, aka Wolf. Puffy's former bodyguard, Gene Deal, says that Wolf was not the one who killed Big Jake and claims it was one of Puffy's friends from Brooklyn named Jason. Big Jake's death was seen as Puffy's fault in the eyes of Suge and the rest of Death Row. If you thought things couldn't get any worse for Puffy, then you're wrong, because the man that Suge recruited to destroy Bad Boy was about to be free. On October 12, 1995, Suge Knight once again visited Tupac in prison. This time he posted a $1.4 million bond, releasing Tupac from Clinton Correctional Facility after serving 8 months in prison. Tupac would sign to Death Row Records on a 3-album deal with the label while his appeal was pending. Tupac and Suge Knight would form an unbreakable bond, almost like brothers, because as I mentioned earlier, no label was willing to give Pac a chance. They always viewed him as unmarketable and bad for their image. Tupac fit Death Row like a glove, maybe too good, because him and Suge together were a bad combination. Two guys who are willing to crash out at any moment. Tupac viewed Suge as the only one who gave him a chance. Everyone else let him rot in jail, but Suge was the one who came and took a chance with him. Tupac would immediately be appointed as the one who would destroy Bad Boy and the East Coast hip-hop scene in general. He came out of prison like a caged animal who was ready to take on everyone, having a lot to get off his chest. The Quad Studio shooting and everything else that he was hearing inside the joint were still fresh in Pac's mind. He was more angry than ever at the world. So now, he would finally have his chance to get back at everyone. Tupac would now find a new family in LA with Death Row, and was more ready than ever to get back on the scene. Tupac would align himself with gang members, mostly Suge's Mob Pyru goons, and it was now all-out war on Biggie, Bad Boy, Jimmy Henchman, and everyone else he felt betrayed him and set him up to get shot that night at the Quad Studio in New York.
They know in their heart. That's why they get held now. They can't sleep. That's why they telling all the reporters and all the people, why they doing because they're happy. They can't make money, they can't go anywhere, they can't look at themselves, because they know the prodigal son has returned. I'm alive. The ghost is walking around. You know what I mean? And I'm alive, talking. Everybody that thinks that I disrespected or I love my East Coast fans. I'm from there. I'm eating New York pizza. I drive New York Jeeps, want to eat New York. But I'm saying, let's keep it real for a second. If you have the love of music that you are, study. Go back and study. Study why I would be mad. Study why people would be mad when half of New York, half of the major New York rappers, or they managers, or they agents, or they somebody was there when I got shot. And nobody could give you no information. Just study that. That's all I ask. If you're gonna act like you a gangster or a G or the king of New York, I'm gonna expect that. When you don't come through, they're gonna want to crush your empire. And that's what's time for. Why is it suddenly a nigga tripping when I do? Why everybody else can have a war, have beef within the music, talk about differences, and it's okay, it's music, it's hip hop, it's groundbreaking. When I do it, it's war. They got that portrayal of being first they tough, then something happened to them, they turn to God. Then when everything's cool, they tough again. I don't understand it. It's real confusing to me.
Just a week after his release, on October 18th, 1995, Faith Evans, who was Biggie's wife at the time, would come to LA. Tupac and Faith Evans would run into each other at the Hollywood Athletic Club off of Sunset Boulevard. From there, the two allegedly went back to Pac's hotel room where Tupac would allegedly sleep with Biggie's wife, Faith Evans. The next day, the two would go to the studio. Faith Evans was originally supposed to perform the chorus on the track Wonder Why They Call You a Bitch off of Pac's upcoming album All Eyes on Me. People say that they saw Faith Evans sitting on Pac's lap at the studio. The two would be seen again on November 14th, 1995, at the release party in LA for the Waiting to Exhale soundtrack release party. Faith Evans went on to deny she ever hooked up with Pac and claimed that at that after party, Pac allegedly pressured her into giving him oral in order to get paid for the song Wonder Why They Call You a Bitch. Tupac's camp would later deny Faith Evans' claim. Tupac allegedly slept with Faith Evans as a get back to Biggie to humiliate him in front of the world because Pac was against Biggie, Bad Boy, and their entire camp for allegedly setting him up that night, nearly killing him with 5 shots. Pac even suggested that Suge should hook up with Puffy's baby mama, Misa Hilton, who Puffy had his first son Justin with, to add more disrespect, so that's exactly what Suge did. In October 95, he would begin hooking up with Puffy's baby mama, and they dated for around a month. But Suge would often fly her and her son to LA to get in Puffy's head. Here's a picture of Suge Knight with Puffy's child, Justin, and Misa Hilton. I mean, it doesn't get any more disrespectful than hanging out with your enemy's baby mama and their child. This was very over the top, but that is an ongoing theme here with Pac and Suge. Two loose cannons with hot heads. It was a dangerous combination. Around this time, Tupac began working on his next album, All Eyes on Me, which was set to be a double album. On December 3rd, 1995, Tupac dropped his comeback single called California Love, featuring Dr. Dre. This track was originally intended to be Dr. Dre's comeback single for his next album, The Chronic 2, A New World Order, Papa's Got a Brand New Funk, but that project was scrapped entirely. Suge Knight convinced Dre to give Pac this song because he knew it was the hit that Pac needed to come back with. Dre agreed, but ended up giving Pac the remix version and keeping the original version for himself. This would go on to be Tupac's most successful song to date, reaching #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, staying there for 2 weeks. And Suge's plan to get Death Row back on top was absolute magic at work. A line on this track would catch the attention of Keefe D and the Southsiders, who were backing Bad Boy at the time, when Pac said this. The street Pac is referring to, Rosecrans and Long Beach Boulevard, is territory of the mob Piru Suge was affiliated with. This line ended up pissing off several Southside Crip members. According to Keefe D, in his book Compton Street Legend, Keefe D and some Southside Crip members ended up running into Tupac at the House of Blues on Sunset Boulevard. Tupac was with Big Syke from the Outlaws, and one of the members of the Southside Crips named Oldie allegedly grabbed Pac by his collar and pushed him against the wall and said, "You know what that Long Beach and Rosecrans stands for? That's the wrong side, motherfucker." Big Syke, being a well-respected member of the Imperial Village Crips from Inglewood, would talk to Oldie and they let Pac go. In early November of 95, Mark Anthony Bell, who was a promoter, A&R on the East Coast, and a friend of Puffy's since high school, who had done work with Death Row, Him and a friend of his, who was a photographer, went to the death row offices. There, Mark Bell was handed a piece of paper by a death row employee that was a note asking him to reveal any inside information he had about Puffy, his family, and his LA address. Suge wanted to know where Puffy's home was on the West Coast so he and his goons could come pay him a visit. He was instructed to write it on the note and drop it to the floor and say nothing, to which Bell would refuse to do it. On December 15th, 1995, Death Row was having a Christmas party called Holiday Bash at a house in Hollywood Hills. Mark Bell and his friend attended the party, arriving around 10:30 p.m. Tupac was there with his mother, but Suge wouldn't show up until around 2 a.m. Suge saw Mark, so he would have a talk with him and confronted him for not cooperating with his instructions to reveal Puffy's personal information. Bell insisted that he knew nothing about Puffy or where he stays at when he's in LA. Suge would then tell Mark Bell that they could finish their conversation upstairs in the VIP room. Mark made the mistake and followed Suge to the VIP room, not knowing that he was going into a shark's tank. Mark Bell had no idea that Puffy and Suge were in the middle of a deadly war, so this was a recipe for disaster. Suge made everyone step out of the VIP room, except Mark Bell, himself, Tupac, Dr. Dre, and other Mob Piru goons. Suge would then pull a chair out and sit in front of Mark Bell and question him, asking if he knows where Puffy's mom lives and how he can get to his office. Tupac was whispering more questions to ask him in Suge's ear. Suge's goons would then begin yelling, "This is for a homie that died," meaning Big Jake, which Death Row saw as Puffy's fault. Mark Bell was then punched in the face by more goons and hit with bottles, with Suge demanding that he bring Puffy to him. Tupac was yelling at Bell, claiming that he was lying about not knowing Puffy's whereabouts, and then Suge's goons threatened to kill Bell. Suge would then do the unthinkable. He left the room, went to the bathroom, and urinated in a shot glass. He returned with the glass of urine and handed it to Mark Bell. One of Suge's goons hit him in the face, making him drop the urine, to which Bell tried making a run for the balcony, but was grabbed by everyone with Tupac punching him in the neck. Bell's friend, who was the photographer, would see Bell, so Suge went downstairs, pretending like he was fixing up and straightening the Christmas tree. Bell's friend got in his car and would inform the police that his friend was in danger at the party. In the VIP room, Mark Bell was being beaten down by Suge's goons and Tupac kicking him in the body and punching him. He was even put in a chokehold for a couple of minutes. They stole his wallet and jewelry while he was in the chokehold, losing $30,000 worth of his belongings. Suge would then come back and act like nothing happened, offering Mark Bell a position at death row. Eventually, the cops arrived. Suge and his goons let Bell go, to which he would eventually leave in a taxi cab. Mark Bell eventually flew back home to New York, where word would get back to Puffy that Suge was going to extreme lengths to try and find out where he lives. Puffy was even more afraid now because Suge was willing to do all of this. The next day, on December 16th, 1995, Snoop Dogg and the Dogg Pound were in New York shooting the music video for the track New York, New York, off the Dogg Pound's debut studio album, Dog Food, which dropped in October of that year. Snoop Dogg and the Dogg Pound wanted to do an interview with Funkmaster Flex, saying that all of the New York rappers should come hang out. He revealed that DPG is here shooting a music video in Times Square and Red Hook, Brooklyn. Funkmaster Flex ultimately did not let them in. Biggie would call in Hot 97 to speak with Funkmaster Flex, where he would reveal live on the air that the Dogg Pound were shooting a music video in Red Hook, Brooklyn, saying how dare they come to New York and shoot a video dissing us. The video that the Dogg Pound were shooting actually was not a diss towards New York, but rather Snoop and DPG paying homage and showing love. Biggie calling in and saying this would lead to Snoop and the Dog Pound getting shot at later that day while they were in their trailer on the set for their video. Luckily, none of them got hit with any bullets. Some say this was done as Biggie's way of getting back at Pac. Former Death Row head of security, Reggie Wright, would claim that Biggie did this because he was pissed that Snoop and DPG allegedly took his beat for his commercial for St. Ida's to use on their track New York, New York. This would lead to the Dog Pound and Snoop to change the music video featuring Snoop Dogg kicking down buildings as a diss towards New York for the shooting. After this, Tupac would become more enraged with Biggie. The next year, on January 4th, 1996, in an article with the New York Times Magazine, Tupac and Suge would allude to Pac sleeping with Biggie's wife, Faith Evans. Tupac is the only one in a different color. He's wearing an elaborately patterned gold shirt and baggy jeans. The wife of a top rapper bought this for him, Suge says. Who's that? Tupac smiles. His name is an acronym, Notorious B.I.G.'s wife, Faith Evans. She bought him this and a suit and some other stuff, Suge says. And how do you thank her, Tupac? Tupac pauses. I did enough. Biggie apparently was enraged after reading this, as you can imagine, so he aggressively confronted her. After Biggie saw the photos of her and Pac together, with Faith Evans putting up her hand, showing that she has no wedding ring on, Biggie crashed out and started choking her, but to the media, he just brushed it off as a joke, showing that Tupac can't get under his skin, because clearly this was Suge and Pac's plan. In early '96, Biggie recorded a track with Busta Rhymes called The Ugliest. It's heavily speculated that Biggie's verse was subliminally about Tupac.
And the winner is not that delicate, bandanas, tattoos, my fist never bruised.
Busta Rhymes left the track off his.
Simplify your snacks with RX Bar Nut Butter and Oat.